I'd just like to inform everybody here, this resolution that was passed at the United Nations, the rights of indigenous people, does not apply to us. Canada, the United States, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand refused to sign it. And only a while later did the United States and Canada and Great Britain, Australia, and New Zealand sign it. Because according to the United Nations, we are not people. They do not recognize that the ﷺ and the Aborigines of Australia or the Maoris of New Zealand and other countries, that they don't recognize us as people. They refer to us under the UN as population. Just like the deer or the ducks on the pond or the grass that grows on your lawn or the trees of the forest, we're put in the same category. That's why even today here in Canada, they put us in a department, they call it the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. That's basically the Interior Department. And the Interior Department is the one that deals with parks and rivers and lakes and resources and so on. The ﷺ is a resource. He's not a human. He's not a people. The United States is the Department of the Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Department of the Interior, which is the same thing. We're all categorized as part of the natural environment. And the thing is that didn't just start when the Americans and Canadians established themselves. It came from when they first came across the ocean under the Papal Bull, a part called the Doctrine of Discovery. The church had declared that if at time of contact, when Europeans came to foreign lands, and if the people were not Christian at the time of contact, then we have no sovereignty, and that we should be treated just as the rest of the wildlife of this land.
Yeah.
And so they said we could not own our lands. We didn't have any human rights. And that started way back, even before they came to this land, because they were doing it when they were going to Asia and Africa. Because the people down there were Christian, that was how they were trying to justify that they had a right by God saying that these white men can steal everybody's land.
Yeah.
And that still applies here today. But our people don't understand that. And when they put us in a category as Indians, it's not because of Indian people. It's because an Indian is a corporation. That's why you have this tax-exempt status, because you're part of this corporation, a not-for-profit corporation. And so when people think, well, we don't pay tax because we're tax-exempt, no. Tax exemption is a privilege. Non-taxable is who you're supposed to be. That they have no right to tax you. But they have you give up your birthright for a privilege. And if they can give you that privilege, then you've given them the power to take that privilege away from you, and which they will do. Now, before, not long ago, iron workers could go from Canada to the States. They didn't pay tax. And then back in the 20s, ǳၤ彙case, they tried to force him to get a green card because he was from ǳၤ彙working in the States. But he fought that. And they even brought up the Jay Treaty, even though the Jay Treaty is not ours. It's just a trade agreement between the British and the Americans. But in that trade agreement, it said that they would not interfere with use free travel back and forth and all this kind of stuff. And so our people supposedly won that case. But for any of our cases to be adjudicated in the white man's courts, we didn't win. We think we won, but we didn't win. Because by going into their courts and adjudicating this in their system, then we forfeit, our birthright. That we, give up our sovereignty. Because I'll tell you, back in the 90s, I testified in a court case in Niagara Falls. And it was the Tuscarora Council there who sued Joe Anderson, ÇeÓ and the people. And they took the people to court. And so the people asked me if I would come in and testify on ÇeÓ. And so I agreed. But before the court started, the ÇeÓ council came in and they sat at the front with their lawyer, who was the Assistant Attorney General of the state of New York. So the state of New York was financing their case, their lawsuit against the people. And so the judge, he watched this, and he says, before this court starts, he says, I want to know from you, he asked the Assistant Attorney General, do your clients understand by coming into this court that they have given away their sovereign immunity? Those ÇeÓ chiefs looked at each other, no clue what the heck this judge was asking. And the lawyer didn't know. And so they all turned around and looked at the back of the courtroom. Orrin Lyons was sitting in the back. And they looked at Orrin for guidance. Orrin says, it's okay, yeah. So they said, yeah. Right then, the judge saying, you know, so this is supposed to be a representative of a people, of a government, and yet they're subjecting themselves to a foreign court. And so they lost the case. They lost the case on that. And so I testified on ÇeÓ. I explained န့ě뉘န့য, 잿twinhxta, I explained all of those things. And the judge just listened. And when I first had to testify, the Attorney General was asking me, do you live on an island? I said, no. I knew right away, just by that question, what he was trying to accuse me of. Then he says, do you run an illegal gambling establishment? I said, no. The third question was, did you ever take up arms against the police? I said, can you be more specific? Which police? And he looked around and he says, the New York State Police. I says, oh yes, I have. I says, also the federal marshals, also the OPP in Canada, the SQ in Quebec, the RCMP, against the National Guard. I said, I've taken up arms against all of them. And I looked at the judge. I says, I did that because it was my duty and responsibility under my Constitution. I says, no different than you. I says, when you came to this land and adopted our Constitution, I says, you put in there that your citizens have the right to bear arms and to form a militia. I said, should the Soviet Union invade the shores of the United States, is it not your duty and responsibility to defend your country, your government, and your people? The judge says, yeah. I said, and you got that from us out of the ÇeÓ. Everything I explained, I always pointed back to the judge that you took that from us. And the judge did not have a problem. He ruled against the chiefs. And he told them, he says, if you have a problem with the businesses that the people in ÇeÓ have going, he says, you have a right to protest it. But he says, since you brought it under my jurisdiction, he says, you can have 5 people hold up signs, but you cannot obstruct the businesses. That was it. They lost the case. Same thing just happened. I testified in another case in Montreal. And because there the band council decided this new law that they were making, if you marry out, get out. Well, some women asked me if I would go in and testify on what is our way. So I agreed and I went. And so my first thing I always say to all the judges, this case does not belong in this court. These are internal issues, but I understand why it was brought up here. And so I explained to him, I says, I'm not here because I'm taking the position of either side. I'm here to explain to you what is our way. And so I explained about the adoption process. I explained about, that our people never went by blood quantum. That was a part of the assimilation process, the genocidal process. And how the rights of women were taken away and so on and so forth. And I said, that's not our way. I says, we have always taken people in. I says, you can go back to Eunice Williams when she was brought from Deerfield, Massachusetts as a young girl. She was adopted into the Mohawk people. Then there was William Fenton, who the Senecas took in. Rowdy Hopewitz was taken in by the Mohawks in ﷺ. It says, bring it closer to home. Oh, it says, and also it says King Louis XVI's grandson, what you call the missing Dauphin. I says he was adopted and taken in Kahnawake. I says it was never about blood. It was the mind. What kind of mind did these people have? I says, and bring it closer to home. I says, across the river, a place called Lachine, there was a war fought between the Iroquois people and the French, and we defeated them. And you call that a massacre. I said, and for us it was a victory. But I said, anytime you lost a war, you said we massacred you. I said, but it was a victory. I said, in our ways, when you take life from our people, we'll replace that life with one of yours. I said, so we took your women and children, and we brought them home, 150 of them or more. I said, they lived with our people until the French negotiated with us to return their people. I said, we returned their people, but within 4 months, all 150 of them came back to live with us, because it was the only place they were ever treated like human beings. I said, and we adopted them. I said, that's why a lot of our people in Kahnawake and so on, I said, we're like complexions, because a lot of them are our ancestors. And so I said, but it was always the mind. I said, for us, when we took somebody in, we took them in as babies. It didn't matter if they were 6 months old or 60 years old. When they became a part of us, that's the day they were being born, as far as we were concerned. And it was in our law that we would never bring up their past, especially to use it in a negative way against them. I said, that was our way. I said, you, on the other hand, I said, you did not have an immigration policy. And I said, you got that when you came here, because you seen how we did it. Because what happened was that because we were adopting many of your people were applying to our people to become a part of our society. I said, Canada, at that time, Britain and the United States decided that they couldn't stop us from adopting the Europeans. So what they did was they said they would not recognize the adoption, and so their former subjects would still be forced to comply with white laws. And I said, so that discouraged people from seeking to be adopted by our people. Then you start to impose the blood quantum and, and so on. I said, but what you did was you took our formula and you created an immigration policy, a process. I said, but you didn't do like we did. You did not bring these people in to be family. I said, you took these people in to be slaves. You called them citizens. I said, citizens do not have rights. I said, they're just a more sophisticated way of not calling them slaves, but telling them that they're citizens. And the judge listened to all of this. Never said a word. He just wrote all the notes down. Then the Crown prosecutor got up. He never cross-examined me. He was afraid to cross-examine me. And then, so when I went to sit down, he got up, the Crown prosecutor, he said to the court, he says, Your Honor, I have to inform the court that our experts will not be coming in to testify. There were 4 people that were supposed to be going there from, they called the Longhouse, to go and testify on behalf of the Band Council, saying the Band Council has the authority to make laws in our community. And when they found out that I was testifying, all 4 of them backed out. And so that a lawyer had to get up and inform the court. He says, our experts will not be coming in to testify. And while we were still in the courtroom, one of the experts, who is a professor in the University of British Columbia, and he's from Kahnawake, he texted one of the women, and he says, I just want to let you know I'm not coming in to testify. I've changed my opinion. And yet, it was ridiculous, because this man was one of the ones who designed that law for the Band Council to evict women and people from our community. They lost the case too. The Band Council lost the case. And the Band Council, after that, their chief kept saying to the people and to the media, what Paul Delarone said was right. It was right. But they would never tell the people in Kahnawake what I said, what my words were. Just that I was right. Because he did not dare to say I was wrong. because I would have visited him. So the thing is, I want our people to understand the power we have. But when we don't assert it, we are nothing. We are nothing if we don't assert it. And each time, even when I went to Brantford to testify, that was my first statement. This case does not belong in this court. And I explained about what our ways are. And it was very sad that that case was ever brought to Brantford, because what it's told everybody was that over here, nobody objected. Not the Bank Council, not the Longhouse objected to these men to be charged and to be brought into they brought Ontario jurisdiction into Çeʔʔʔʔ, and nobody seemed to understand that. That is very sad. We should not be allowing our people to go through the judicial system out there, because that's what the 떼ትዮ낳 has always been about. And it's clearly stated in Article 7 of the 1794 खेरि, even though it's not a valid treaty, but that explanation in there comes from 떼ትዮ낳, is that if our people committed around against any outside sovereign, like the United States, Canada, Great Britain, whatever, they have to launch a formal complaint either to the Confederacy or to the nation that person comes from. And our people will investigate. And if a wrong was committed, we would compensate them. Vice versa. We also would lodge a formal complaint if a wrong was committed against our people. See, because we're not doing that. But in 1974 up to 76 in θηκε, when we took over, we shot white people. But they could not process us through the courts. Because we told them, if you want justice in this matter, then you have to implement the ţύρωο. You have to make a larger formal complaint, and then we will utilize that process. President Ford was the president, and it has to be the president or somebody who's specially appointed by the president. So he appointed Forrest Gerard, who was then the head of the Department of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He appointed him to be his special appointee to implement the ţύρωο. Over 200 years that ţύρωo was not implemented until that time in 1970s when θηκε forced the hand of the United States. And in the end, their findings was we were never in the wrong. Even though we shot people, we were defending, and we have the right to defend ourselves. And so what the United States did was they had to compensate the people we shot and their families, because we asserted it. They tried to come to us with Jane Doe warrants, Joe Doe warrants, and that. We said, take your warrants and put it where the sun don't shine. It's not applicable here. But when we stand and firm and do not deviate from our ways, there's nothing that we can't win. But we have to believe in who we are.
Yeah.
That's the only way it works. The minute we use something that's in theirs, then we've gotten out of the canoe and we've put our foot in the vessel. That's what that 떼ትዮ낳 explains. That's what he tells us. And that comes from our people. Because the white man didn't have that kind of system. None of our rights come from treaties. They could not give us any rights. If anybody got any right, it was them. Because they had nothing to give. They came here with holes in their pants. They were starving. They were sick. We opened our homes to them. And when we extended them the right to go the depth of the plow, we said that to go the depth of the plow is all we allow you, because it will help so you can raise the food to sustain yourselves. But we cannot give our mother away, because she's not ours to give away. When we talk about one bowl, one spoon, that's this land. And there's none of us that can say to someone, you can't fish here. There's no one that can say, you can't hunt here. You can't pick medicine here. You can't build a home here. This is All of us, this is our mother. And we are not the kind of people that would dissect our mother, chop her up into pieces and all take, somebody walk away with one finger, another guy walk away with a toe, somebody walk away with her ear. No, our mother has to stay intact because she has to be the way we came upon her. Our children should come upon her that same way. We never got any rights. Treaties does not give us rights. The only thing that is ours is that ŒOHADE. That's what we extended to them. They did not have the sovereign right to negotiate with us. When Canada wanted its own flag, they no longer want to fly the Union Jack. They approached the Crown and they said, we want our own flag. The Queen says, well, sure, you can have your own flag. So they used the maple leaf as their symbol of Canada. Then they said, we want our own constitution. And the Queen says, yeah, every corporation has a right to a constitution. Corporate law. You know, something to govern your corporation. Then Canada went back and they approached the Crown and they said to the Crown, we want dominion over the land and the people. The Queen says, I can't give you that. They says, why not? She says, it's not mine. Says the land belongs to the people, the native people. And so I can't give you what's not mine. She says, if you want the land and dominion over the land, then you have to find a way to negotiate with the native people in which they relinquish any claim to their lands. All of these so-called land transactions that they're doing nowadays, they're not doing with our people. They're not dealing with µ'qwu'n'qwuc'. They're dealing with the corporations they established in our communities. They're dealing with elective system people. They're dealing with government-funded organizations outside of here. They're all the honatukohtu. They have all alienated themselves. They have no more birthright here. When they went beyond that circle, they went out naked. They don't have the right to the name, µ'qwu'n'qwuc' name. They have no right to claim that they're a part of a clan, and they have no birthright left inside. They are out there naked. And now they've immersed themselves in a foreign system. Canada is not a people. It's a corporation. We are, on the other hand, we are a people. We have the same bloodline. We have the same ancestry. We have the same language. We have the same culture. We have the same traditions. Everything about us is the same. We are a people. Our beliefs, we're a people. They, on the other hand, what is a Canadian? The Canadian corporation. What it is it's a collective of individuals who share a common interest. They don't share a common history, they don't share a common culture, they don't have a common tradition. They have nothing in common other than an interest. And what is that interest? Well, our land and the wealth that it provides. I mean, look at the United States. In the 60s, the big controversy down there, the black people marching for civil rights. They still don't have civil rights. I don't care what Martin Luther King said, what kind of dream he had. He should have woke up to reality. The only thing the black man got was a one-day holiday, Martin Luther King Day. That's all he got. He's still being oppressed. He's still not being treated as an equal. He's still resented. They put a black president in, not because he was black, because he was white on the inside. Because his mother was part of the Bush family, part of the Trump family. That's all that same family. That's the oligarchy. That's who got in. And Obama was a token. And what did Obama do for the black people? Talk cool. That's what he did, talk cool. And said, look, I can play basketball like you, brother. We become such a society where we like to knock everybody else down. We like to blame everybody else for our problems. Yeah, they were the start of our problem, but we continued the problem. because we did nothing. We just cried. Cried and cried and cried, and we're still crying. We're crying what the white man did to us. So what are we doing to help ourselves? You know, when we went into the mountains in 1974 to take that land, everybody told us you can't do it. Everybody else told us that they're going to kill you, or they're going to throw you in prison, they're going to beat you up, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. So what? There's worse ways to die, staying here on the reservation and drinking and crashing and dying. Our children are dying every weekend. Every graduation day they're dying. At least if we died, we can die with honor. And we went into those mountains. We were under siege for 3 damn years. Yeah? I seen where our kids ate. Oatmeal and beans. 3 meals a day. Women eating twice a day. Men eating. I'm sorry. But I've seen these things. I've seen what our people went through. And not only there. It happened at his home, ﷺ. I've seen it happen in so many communities. But there are people who believed and they fought. They never gave up. And today, 45 years later, the land we took is still under our control. And there's no government, white government laws, there's no white religions there. There's none of those things. Our people have become self-sufficient. We built our own schools, we got sawmills, we got greenhouses, we got businesses, we've got all kinds of things going. And we control it all. And everybody said we couldn't do it. And you know something? You travel through all Confederacy today, most of our people don't know about ﷺ. It's the best kept secret in our homes. Nobody wants to talk about it. Because if our young people became more aware of what we did in 1974, young people would say, look at how many of us there are here. How come we're not doing something? That delegation that went to Geneva in 1977, one of the things the nations over there asked, other than who was, they said, and they heard the story of what Ǩaynaqi did, and they asked the others, are you doing what these people did? Are you a part of it? Silence. And those people out there said, that's sovereignty. That is sovereignty. What the people of Ǩaynaqi did is sovereignty. North Carolina went down there, hunting and fishing rights. The ﷺ asked us to go down there. Before the court even began, the judge sent word that he wanted myself and my companion to come and to speak with him. So we went inside. And he says, I know who you guys were before you came here. I knew who you guys were before you came into my courtroom. He says, I know who you are. He says, do you know, he says, that these people that you're coming to help don't know who they are? They don't know what their rights are or anything. And I said to him, we know that. That's why they called us. Because they're under the protection of General ﷺ. We have a responsibility to them. He says, and that's why we're here. And he just smiled. He says, you know, he says, I know there are 3 kinds of Iroquois. And this is a judge saying this. He says, there's the elective system people. Iroquois people who partake in the elective system. He says that there's another one who are followers of a religion called the Code of Handsome Lake. He says, and then there are those who are followers of the န့ě뉘rịnh the Great Law, he says. He says, the elected system and the people who follow the code are the same. He says, they have no claim to any sovereignty. Only those who continue to adhere to the န့ě뉘rịnh, the Great Law, is recognized as having any chance in hell for our people.